Hello, everybody, and welcome to Ask Me Anything About Politics. This is the show where you can ask me anything about politics that you like, and I will do my best to give you a great answer. I know that politics can be really weird these days with all of the misinformation and propaganda out there. I know that it can be really intimidating to try to even know what's going on with politics because of how, I don't know, complicated and strange it can be. So this is the place. This is the place where you can ask all of your questions about politics, and you don't have to worry about getting judged or roasted or debated. Let's see here. Eleni says, "Kiddos." JP says, "Good morning. Hope you're well." I hope you're well too, JP. So yeah, any questions about politics, just put them in the chat and we will get to answering them. There is no such thing as a dumb question. I don't believe in making people feel stupid or ashamed for trying to learn new things. I also don't believe in judging people based on their questions. So if you're worried that your question is going to make you feel like a MAGA person or make you seem like a lib cuck person, you don't have to worry about any of that. Everybody is welcome here. Democrats, Republicans, everything in between, and everything on the outskirts. Dante says, if you had to change the country you were born in, what country would you choose? That's a really interesting question. I mean, like, just based on global affluence, I really don't think I could have done better than being born in America. I do kind of wish that I was born in a country that had more social programs like universal health care. There are countries that have a much higher consistently score much higher on the happiness index, like Norway, Sweden, Denmark, etc. So I definitely wouldn't be mad about that. I would not be mad about Canada or the Netherlands, etc. Excellent first question, Dante. Thank you so much. JP says Jon Stewart implied Chuck Schumer organized the defecting Democratic votes. Thoughts? I think it is pretty obvious that Chuck Schumer organized the defecting Democratic votes. The fact that everybody who voted for it is not up for reelection in 26, the fact that, there's been reporting that people have been putting pressure on Schumer to end the shutdown, since day one. And him holding together the coalition until now was a pretty Herculean feat. But yeah, it definitely falls on his shoulders. And where I have a lot of empathy for how difficult the job of minority leader is, particularly, being the minority leader as opposed to being the majority leader. I do think it is time for Chuck Schumer to go. I do think that everybody should be calling their representatives and encouraging them to hold a special conference to oust Schumer as minority leader. The difficulty there, the stickiness of it, is that apparently he is going to retire at the end of his most recent, at the end of this term, basically. And he says that he wants to retire as leader. And I don't think that we should let him, but I'm sure that there are going to be a lot of people in the Senate who are like, just let him have it for a couple more years, kind of a thing. And so, yeah, call your reps, let them know that this is not the time for that shit. And so let's fucking do it. Misty Lane says, "Do you think Democrats alone can fix America?" No, I think that the voters need to help the Democratic Party because the Republicans have the billionaire class to help them forward the agenda, and the Democrats do not. Ooh, let's see here. Triska Fawn says, "Better family leave programs, free childcare." That is accurate. Dante says, my second question would be, can you elaborate on what type of healthcare and college subsidies Israel has for their citizens? I'm not really sure exactly, but I think I know what you're circling around, Dante, which is that there's more funded social programs in Israel based on money that we are giving them than we are giving our own citizens. I think that's probably what you're getting at, Dante. Correct me if I'm wrong. Kimberlina says, who would replace Schumer? Would Durbin get ditched too? I think they both should. Who is a difficult question because according to some talking heads that I have heard, people are saying that the only person who would be able to take the speakership from him would be AOC, and that she first would have to beat him in the Senate race, which she probably would very much be able to do, and then could be voted in as the head of the coalition. But the other issue for that is that there's also talk that people want AOC to run for president, and so obviously she can't do both. And yeah, I don't know if there's a front runner right now. I don't know if there's anybody that the Democratic Party is looking at to replace Schumer, and that is probably also going to be a delay mechanism that they use to be like, let's let Schumer just let him exit as speaker in 28 or whatever. But again, I don't think we should let them do that. I think we should put pressure on them to pick somebody else, somebody younger, somebody who maybe is what do you call it? Somebody who maybe has a little bit more spring in their step. Let's see here. Ecuadorian baseball pitcher, good to see you again. Kyrie or Kyer says, do you think state governments should claw back SNAP benefits paid out recently? No, they should not. People need SNAP benefits. Dante says, I just heard that healthcare in college is heavily subsidized there, and I couldn't find details. I believe it is. I'm pretty sure it is. I hear people say that it is. I just have not looked into it. Netclips says, are you a communist? Yes or no? Hurry up. I will take my sweet ass time, Netclips. I do not care for being ordered around by somebody who I'm assuming views anybody who describes themselves as a communist as an idiot. So yeah, I will take my sweet ass time, Netclips. Thank you very much. User a bunch of numbers says, thoughts on old Nancy finally retiring after making millions on insider trading. Do you have a problem with Republicans making money on insider trading also, user a bunch of numbers, or is it just Democratic women that you have a problem with? User a bunch of numbers says AOC is in Apex pocket. That is not accurate, and also that is not a question, so you are out of here. All right, Netclips, it's time for me to answer your question now that I've made you wait. You're probably not even fucking here anymore. But no, I'm not a communist. No, I'm not a capitalist. No, I'm not a socialist. I believe in a mixed system. Italiana says, Jasmine Crockett, can she take his place? No, because she's in the House and not the Senate. Okay, Firebrand says, what are your thoughts on social liberalism or social democracy? I'm not really sure what you mean by those. I know that there are a lot of people who like to weaponize semantic arguments in politics by just defining the terms however they want and then getting people to say that that's the thing that they like. I would just say that the politicians that I prefer, they tend to describe themselves as social democrats. So AOC, Bernie Sanders, Zohran Mamdani, that's definitely the side of the Democratic Party that I tend to live in. Eric says, do you think they'll ever fix the Affordable Care Act? Not while Republicans are in charge, Eric, so we got to elect more Democrats. It's the Rocketeer. Wait, hold on a second. Question. Ecuadorian baseball pitcher says, do you think with Trump using ICE, Latin America should respond by creating our own version and mass deporting Americans in retaliation? I mean, every sovereign nation is completely justified in doing whatever they like to retaliate against the Trump administration. So I guess it's just up to Ecuador, I suppose. Sorry, or up to Latin America in general. JP says, don't wait for the translation. Answer the question. I get your Star Trek reference. It's Rocketeer says, have I missed your thoughts on the Dems caving in the Senate? Other commentators are spinning this as a long game win. I think it's hyperbolic to both call it caving and also calling it like brilliant strategy. As with almost everything in politics, the truth is much more complicated and it is somewhere in the middle. I think if you really want a perfectly nuanced discussion about all the ins and outs of Democrats agreeing to fund Trump's government, today's episode of Pod Save America, I think fucking nailed it. I was just sitting there fucking nodding my head, being like, this is exactly what I've been fucking saying. This is exactly what I've been fucking talking about. So yeah, short version is that there are some good things and some bad things about it. According to some reporting, there are a bunch of Democrats that have not been on board with the shutdown for a long time. And, if you want to give Schumer any credit, you can say that the fact that he held his coalition together this long is Herculean. What they did get in the negotiations was, first of all, the funding only goes until January, so we get to have this fight again in January. They fully fund SNAP benefits until 27, so Trump cannot threaten that if the government gets shut down again. And also they agreed that the president is not allowed to fire federal employees during shutdowns, which again, if the government is shut down in January, then that takes away a bunch of the leverage that Trump was using. Because basically, what Republicans were doing was making Americans suffer more in order to put more pressure on the Democratic Party to end the shutdown. And while that's great for messaging, that's great for us to go out there and be like, look what Republicans are doing. That doesn't do anything to alleviate the actual suffering of fired federal workers or starving SNAP recipients or people freezing because they don't have heating assistance in their houses or apartments, and anybody who's dealing with being fucking scared of exhausted air traffic controllers or fucked over from flight delays and cancellations because of residing air traffic controllers. I will also say this, and this is a particular bug that is up my asshole this morning, is people who are not acutely suffering right now from the shutdown, who are advocating for continuing the shutdown, who are saying that the Democrats are cowards or that they caved or that they're weak or that they gave the Republicans everything that they wanted, from the comfort of themselves not suffering from the shutdown, I find that to be pretty fucking annoying and complete fucking bullshit. These fucking armchair experts and Monday morning quarterbacks who have fucking no skin in the game, who are gonna be fine no matter if the government is shut down or not. Just so fucking callously making it sound like this is the easiest decision on the planet. Yeah, that shit really fucking gets my goat. And this includes people that I typically like a lot. Like I think it was JP, right, over on Twitch, sent me that Jon Stewart. Jon Stewart fucking went off on the Democrats at the top of the Daily Show yesterday, and fucking that really fucking pisses me off, man. It really, really does. All right, Nets Clips says, you are not suffering. 100%. I am including myself in there. And that is the reason why I'm not on here fucking saying, oh my God, the Democrats are so embarrassing. I can't believe they caved. Is because I recognize that Americans were suffering. I recognize that their constituents were suffering. And as the Republican Party was fucking turning the screws, the screams of their constituents were getting louder. I forget who it was, if it was Tim Kaine or who said that this is the first night that they've been able to sleep well at night because they know that Capitol Police are getting paid for the first time in a long time. So yeah, guys. As with everything, it's complicated. I do not believe that this is checkmate on the Republican Party because they're setting up the most perfect shutdown fight in January, but I also don't believe that that this was the worst possible way that Democrats could have handled this, because according to a bunch of people on the internet, this would have been so easy if they'd just been stronger and been stronger leaders, shit like that. Oh, right. Let's see here. CCJF says, why the us versus them sentiment? Because the billionaire class needs us fighting amongst ourselves so that we do not fight them. And if you listen to my show, CCJF, you will know that when I'm talking about the Republican Party, I'm talking very specifically about elected politicians and paid talking heads like Ben Shapiro and Alex Jones. I am never throwing shade at voters. I have in the past. I don't think it's productive, and so I have stopped doing that. Michael Loving says Democrats failed again. No, they didn't. Cooper says, why is Kamala so bad? I don't think that she's so bad. I think she's fine. Guy Fox says, that's the so-called leftists who want to see our country dismantled. I don't know if I agree with that. All right, let's get back into some of these questions over here. It's the Rocketeer. That was very funny. Let's see here. Oh boy, things are really popping off on YouTube and Twitch today. Let's see here. CC says Democrats sold us out too. They got billionaires that sold us out to foreign interests, same as the right. No, that is inaccurate, CCJ. There is a big difference between billionaire influence in the Republican Party, billionaire influence in the Democratic Party, what Republicans do when they're in power versus what Democrats do when they're in power. So saying this is like a both sides equal issue is wildly inaccurate, I would say. Flashbang says, so what do you think about Israel? I think that the government of Israel is guilty of doing atrocities, war crimes, and genocide. And I also think that Hamas is guilty of doing atrocities and war crimes. So I don't support either of the governing bodies of those two countries, but I support the citizens of both Israel and Palestine. Alrighty, I want to get into some of these Twitch and TikTok comments. So if you guys will forgive me over on TikTok, let's see here. I did that one. DJ Moore Break Please says, are we cooked because centrist Democrats went right? Univoted to reopen the government. I don't think so. I think that the Democratic Party recognizes how difficult this decision is for a lot of politicians, and so they tried to arrange a sort of like least worst version of ending the shutdown. So yeah, I don't think that this means that the centrists have like an iron grip on the Democratic Party or anything like that. Average Dose is currently doing research on healthcare policies. Clinics rely on Medicaid for 60 to 75% of their funding. Yeah, and that's exactly why a lot of clinics and hospitals in rural areas are going to be closing down thanks to the Republican Party. Let's see here. John Selfridge, good to see you again. Misty Lane says, is people who think they need scarcity is official. Varies. Let's see here. JP says, the only beneficial change thing I saw was the Office of Spending can still take action and gets to keep its funding. That's good. Yeah, that is very good. And JP says the other gains were versus illegal acts anyways. Yes, but sometimes you need to sort of like reassert that things are illegal. Otherwise, they can get sort of like bogged down in legal, black holes where they just kind of like exist as both on and off, and there's no like real thing that happens. And then, these judges can order the Trump administration to send the funding, but the Supreme Court can say, well, they don't have to send funding right now, but, we'll address this issue some other time, kind of a thing like that. So definitely 100%, it is better to have reasserted that than to just have hoped and prayed that the judiciary would have made it clear that illegal things are not allowed to happen. Okay. John Stelford says, do you think he'll declare martial law before the 26 midterms? I think he'll probably try. I don't know if he'll be successful. John Abbott says, what are you going to spend your $2,000 Trump tariff check on? That's going to my savings account. Alrighty. Back into the TikTok comments. Adam Weddle says, ACA was a Democratic policies. The Dems sunset these credits, but it's the Republicans' fault. No accountability. Adam Weddle, that is completely inaccurate. The Democratic Party authorized subsidies for the Affordable Care Act during the Biden administration. And it was a sunsetted policy as part of a compromise with the centrists in the party who did not want to see the deficit go up any more than it already was. So as per usual, it is way more complicated. People just love fucking throwing the Democrats under the bus because they're an excellent whipping boy. Like, you get so many likes and people rah-rahing you if you say shit about the Democratic Party. It is way more difficult to acknowledge complexity and what do you call it, subtlety. Flashbang Sociopath says, do you think it's an issue that so many U.S. politicians are dual citizens? I don't know if that's true, Flashbang. I know that a lot of people who are laser focused on Israel as the most important fucking issue in this country seem to be saying that, which gives me pause. Like, it seems very adjacent to an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory. And, again, here's some more nuance that I think everybody watching needs to fucking tattoo onto their brain, which is that AIPAC and Israel are 100. It is 100% valid for you to criticize them because they have been up to some real fucking barbaric shit that is meritorious of criticism. I don't know if anybody deserves criticism more than those guys, but there is a weird laser focus on those two groups that I feel very strongly is anti-Semitic conspiracy theory coded. I think that the reason why some people focus on it is because they are trying to push a certain group of people over the edge into, they have a space laser, they have an underground bunker where they can secretly control the banks, etc., etc. Alrighty, Don't Say Straight says, bro ignored my questions yesterday because he has zero credibility. That's not true, Don't Say Straight. I was talking to you for a hot second, but then you got outvoted because there were other questions to get to. Nets Clip says, do you think you can hold your own against Destiny in an Israel debate? I mean, Destiny is a debater. Like that is what he does. And I agree with Destiny on a lot of things. I think he is weird about Israel and, weird about a bunch of things, so I'm not saying that I'm 100% on board with him. So I'm sure that he can, cite some stats or studies or, historical precedents to make his point. I just think it's so fucking clear. Like, if you're doing a G side, if you're doing war crimes, we don't send you any more money and weapons. Like, that's it. What else is there to debate? You know what I mean? All right, 40 Grip says, do you think we will get a healthcare plan? I mean, I think it's possible that the Republican Party strings something together that is basically just robbing Peter to pay Paul kind of a thing. Like, they love these workarounds that supposedly help, like we're going to expand your health savings accounts, and the health savings accounts are going to have this kind of trigger to it or whatever. But it really is just like unbelievably complicated machinery where just extending the Affordable Care Act subsidies would be cheaper and more effective. They want to do a fucking Rube Goldberg instead of just putting money from one place to another. It's so fucking stupid. Right. The Rio Reuzu says if they was gonna do a healthcare plan, they would do it by now. I mean, I think that they view the election losses this last week and um, the American people largely blaming them for the shutdown as evidence that they need to do something on healthcare, even if it's just, a stopgap measure that is going to be fucking stupid. Joni Calder says, do you think those 8 Democrats got paid off? No, I think it's much more complicated than that, Joni. Let's see here. JP says robbing Peter to pay Paul. I was raised Catholic. That is accurate. Misty Lane says, how much you guys want to bet Trump Care is just replacing Obamacare with Reagan Care 2.0? That's pretty funny. Let's see here. All right. Average Joe PG says, from a political strategy perspective, what's your opinion on these points? Number 1, in any resistance, the majority needs to accept that they are likely to suffer. Number 2, a significant portion of Democrats wanted to fight and were willing to suffer. Number 3, Republican voters are already propagandized to believe that Democrats don't help them. That's a very nuanced view about why the Dems shouldn't have caved. So, Average Joe, I completely agree with everything that you're saying. And let me be 100% clear about this. Like, I am one of those people who thinks that Democrats should not have agreed to fund the government right now. Maybe in a couple of weeks, maybe after Thanksgiving, but before Christmas would have been a good compromise or something like that. Like, I'm not saying that what Chuck Schumer and those 8 Democrats did was the right move. I'm just saying it isn't as bad as people were making it out to be, or as good as people are making it out to be. I think that everybody whose top line here is the Dems cave, what they did was stupid, or the Dems are playing 3-dimensional chess y'all don't even fucking understand. Like, both of those camps are completely full of shit, I think. Okay, so yes, but here's where it gets a little bit more complicated, Average Joe, which is that the resistance does need to recognize that they're going to suffer, but I don't think that if you are safe from the suffering, you are allowed to decide that suffering goes on to somebody else. Like, if am I really going to throw federal workers living in Virginia under the bus, for a, political stalemate that I think is better messaging for the Democratic Party than signing on to a spending bill? It seems a little privileged, shitty position, in my opinion. And yet, a significant portion of Democrats wanted to fight. That is 100% accurate. And we might still get another one in February. Right. Nets Clip says, I think it was the right move as of now. And I'm sure that there are lots of people who agree with you, Nets Clips. Legacy says, we will never accomplish anything with that line of thinking. With what line of thinking? Legacy? There will always be one demographic or another that's going to say is getting thrown under the bus. That's an interesting point, Legacy. I guess my response to that would be there is some assuming pain for another group of people whenever you enter a high stakes negotiation like this. The question is, where do you draw the line? When do you pull the trigger? When is forcing your constituents to suffer so that you can call attention to other Americans suffering worth it? And it's a judgment call, So I'm not saying it's 100% right one way or the other. I'm just saying it is something that we really need to consider when we are making these kinds of moves. Zay Miruka says, hello, I know you're not in NYC, but I need to ask, how's Mom Donnie's progress today? I mean, it's been a week or something. He's got a great team assembled. You know, the fact that Lena Khan is on his team, I think is like a fucking that is a fucking grand slam, man. Great for messaging, great for the administration, excellent. Tharia Rosu says we need Medicare for all. Completely agree with that. And wherever people are saying we need Medicare for all, I always feel like I need to put this asterisk on there, which is that we need to recognize that even if everybody agreed to do the transition would be difficult, and people need to be prepared for it being difficult. You know, it's not going to be, you know, shitty private insurance one day and then perfect socialist utopia the next. There is going to be uh, a lot of people are going to have to do a lot of good work, and mistakes will be made, and we're going to have to fucking prepare for that. I want us to be emotionally prepared for that, so that it cannot be weaponized by the billionaire class. Let's see here. Netsclip says just make it to where the ones under the bus are the extremists. I'm not really sure what you mean by that. All right, Phil says, should I get a 50-year mortgage? LOL, JK. I know it's dumb. You are right, Phil. The Iceman comment says the Trojan Caucus here, New York City, and Dearborn, Michigan, Lieutenant Governor. Doesn't even look like the United States. Iceman comment asks a question, I'm going to boot you. I do not care for your type of nonsense rhetoric. Flashbang sociopath. Which question did you want me to answer? I don't see it. Let's see here. John Abbott says, I am not familiar with Aaliyah Khan, as you mentioned. Her name's not Aaliyah Khan, it's Lisa Khan. Could you elaborate on why her being part of his team is noteworthy? So she was running, I believe, the FTC during the Biden administration, and everybody fucking loved her. Republicans, Democrats, everybody, because she was breaking apart monopolies. She was stopping these giant conglomerates from completely capturing essential industries. And you will even hear Steve Bannon talk about how great of a job Lena Khan did. Lena Khan, not Lisa Khan, Lena Khan. You confused me with your Aaliyah thing there, John Abbott. So yeah, she's popular. She's got a great bona fide. She's got a great track record. She knows what she's doing, and you know, she is sort of like building up momentum as a name in progressive politics. Yorkie says, who did she stop? That I don't have memorized, Yorkie, so sorry about that. Kitschy Noodle, good to see you again. Hold on a second. Iceman Cometh says, Obamacare took from the middle class to pay for the poor. Congratulations, Iceman Cometh. You were warned, and now you are out of here. Okay. Not today says, is there a better third country for you communists? I'm not a communist, not today. Rando says, are you for Mamdani? 100%. What's up, Mia? Good to see you again. That guy 420 says, three hedge funds own each other and own 97% of the S&P 500. What are you talking about? That one guy, are you trying to insinuate that what I said was that Lena Khan ended all monopolies? Because that is not what I said. I said she was doing the work of breaking apart monopolies, but, you know, she only had 4 years, and there's only so much work you can do in that time. Kitchen Noodle says, what's your ideal solution to the home affordability crisis? There are a bunch of things that we should be doing in order to make housing more affordable. Number one is building. But there's a lot of things that we could be doing as well. Let's see here. Netsclip says, will Mamdani even make an actual difference? I think so. He might not be able to do everything that he has set out to do, but he will definitely make a difference. Oh, excuse me. Oy, let's go. Yorkie says, is it okay for New York City Muslim prayer calls all day long? That's not going to happen, Yorkie. So I would encourage you to not be like that. Sorry, Sandra, that you have to go pretend to be an adult. Italiana says, so by Dems caving, basically they robbed Peter to pay Paul. I don't know if I agree with that, Italiana. Kimberlina says, number one isn't a 70-year mortgage. That's pretty funny. Jamie says, people think his policies are crazy, but New Mexico literally just passed free childcare. Yeah, you know, there is a certain amount of hyperbole around Mamdani that is being funded by the billionaire class to make it seem like trying to fix income inequality or affordability is like impossible. Let's see here. Dustin Struch says, define a civil society. What are the responsibilities of government? The responsibilities of government are to pursue and advocate for equity in society, so that no human being is starving to death, so that no human being is dying of preventable diseases, so that no human being cannot afford a place to live, so that everybody is free to pursue life, liberty, and happiness in their own way. I suppose if I had to, that's going off the dome. That guy 420 says that is not the government's job. All right, well, I guess that's your opinion then. Yorkie says, why were they blaming Trump for the shutdowns? Because Trump is responsible for the shutdowns. He is in control of the government right now, all three branches. They have full control of the government. So anything that happens to the government right now is their fault. Dustin Stretch says, be a responsible if government goes to war, have those backing paid for that war. Don't know what you're saying there. That guy 420 says, being free is taking responsibility for your life, providing for yourself. That guy 420, yes, but part of taking responsibility is also forming coalitions with other people. And that is what the government does. The government is basically a coalition of people who think we should be doing X, Y, or Z. We all put money into the government, and we would like the government to use that money in ways that help us all out. And so, there are things that are the responsibility of every individual citizen, and there are things that we expect to get from our tax dollars. March Mock 4455 just called me a liar, so that's a block. Congratulations. Alrighty, scrolling down the bottom of the TikTok comments, that guy 420 says negative. That is not the government responsibility. The government responsibility protect your freed. Congratulations. You are annoying me, so you are out of here. Okay. Ivan Cisco says, I have an important question. If Trump is on the fellow with the island files, he has immunity. So what happens? So he only has immunity for things that he does as president that are official acts. And so if he is in those files, he does not necessarily have immunity for those things. It is true that while he is president, it's sort of like against the policy of the justice system to indict a sitting president. But when he's no longer president, he will 100% be liable for any evidence that he did things in those files. Okay, Jamie says, I understand shorthand texting, but some people just type words and hope you understand it. LOL. Yeah, for real. All right, Nikki Valley says, do you think we will win as Democrats in the midterms? Nobody knows that for sure, Nick, if it's going to be yay or nay. I say do the work for the outcome that you want to happen. If people like you and me do the work, then Democrats can run the table in the midterms. If we just sit on our hands and hope for the best, then we're probably fucked. Kimberlina says, could it be an impeachable offense? Potentially, but I don't think that the Democratic Party is, want for reasons to impeach Donald Trump. He has already done more than enough to merit being impeached like 100 times over. Fletch Lives Again says, and he has to have it done while he was president too, right? It doesn't apply to his past. Yes, that is 100% accurate. It has to be while he's president and has to be classified as an official act. And I guess the Supreme Court gets to decide what's an official act and what is not an official act. Zuby30 says, do you think we are in a conflict with Venezuela? I think the Trump administration is trying to start a conflict with Venezuela. If America stopped murdering Venezuelans in open water, then our conflict with Venezuela would essentially be over. But Donald Trump is basically poking Venezuela with a stick, saying, fight me, fight me, fight me. Alrighty. Let's see here. Article 1, Section 8, Congress shall raise taxes to provide for the common defense and general welfare of the United States. Thank you, John Abbott. In a nation by, for, and of the people, that means the general welfare of the populace. So, we're all saying that I was right in my fucking off the dome definition of what the government is. Nick Valley says, do you think USA will go to war with Iran? Probably not, but I think it really depends on how things like the midterms and the 28 election go. Jamie says there wouldn't be one if Trump wasn't attempting to start a war to stop elections. That is accurate. Peyton Hall says Venezuela isn't going to do anything. They might defend their borders. Peyton Hall. Okay. U.S. has opinions on the state of the U.S. stability-wise. Precarious, probably the most precarious it's been in a long time. We're seeing rises in hate crimes and political violence. People are struggling more and more as cost of living continues to increase. And as people get more and more desperate, as young men don't have jobs, tends to be a very destabilizing element. But nothing is set in stone. We have the ability to change course so long as people do the work. Hadasa671 says, "Do you think the children that were abused on the island will ever get justice?" I don't know. I don't know. It's a real fucking bummer because the people that abuse them are rich and powerful by definition, and they have a rich and powerful people have a lot of mechanisms to either fully avoid or delay justice, and it's infuriating. But this is the reason why I vote for Democrats is because if any party is going to change that system, it is going to be them. Trina says when Trump loses the SCOTUS tariff case, he has to repay countries with tariff revenue. That's actually inaccurate, Trina. He would have to pay American companies because American companies are the ones that have been paying those tariffs. And then the companies raised prices based on those tariffs. So we paid the companies paid the government. If the tariffs get reversed, the rebate process is going to be a fucking nightmare. I am 100% sure that there's going to be some corruption, grifting, and theft in there. But yeah, and I'm pretty confident that those corporations are not going to then take whatever rebated money and give it back to their customers. Peyton Hall says, "Do you blame Trump for everything in your life?" Do you say Jamie? Did you mean me, Jarrett, or you talking about Jamie, the person above? I can't believe that Donald Trump is saying that affordability is a Democratic hoax and everything is cheaper. I mean, do you think that what she said was inaccurate, Peyton? Because that is 100%. I think it's a girl because I dated a Jamie back in the day, and there's a guy and the girl in there, but Jamie could be the other one, so I have no idea. That person did not say anything inaccurate, Peyton. So what is it that you're getting on about, Peyton? Alrighty. Nick says, "Do you think will our U.S. democracy will ever take control back from the oligarchs?" Yeah, but we have to do work. The oligarchs have a lot of money and power and resources in which to forward their fight to become the new kings and queens of the world. And we have to consistently be fighting against that because they don't stop. No matter how many elections they lose, they do not stop the process. And because of things like Citizens United, their dollars go a lot further in trying to enact their political agendas. So we have to fight. You know, we win on this past Tuesday, we win the midterm elections, we win 2028. We still have to fight because the billionaires will still be there. Until they are no longer billionaires, they are still a threat to our democracy. Peyton Hall says, "It's been less than 10 months since he took office. The economy is getting stronger." No, that is inaccurate, Peyton Hall. The stock market is doing pretty good, but many argue that it is being propped up by an AI bubble that represents like 70% of our entire economy right now. But cost of living is going up, inflation is going up, people are spending more at the grocery store. The wars are not ending, they are only increasing. He said he was going to solve affordability on day one, and now he's just saying that affordability crisis is not a real thing, Peyton. So are you here to just spread Trump's propaganda message for him, or do you actually want to engage on the substance? T Money says, "LOL, I'm not sure where you're from, but the cost of living is not going up." It is, T Money, without question. And ask a question, or I'm going to boot you. Let's see here. Short says Trump is responsible for 25% of the national debt. And yes, that does affect citizens because the debt has gotten so high, and insurance rates are still high, meaning that the interest on the debt is now crippling and like way too large. Right, Kimberlina says, "Do you think the House will pass the CR and then does it have to go back to the Senate or just to Trump?" They're most likely going to make zero changes to it. My guess is that they sign it and then just send it right over to Trump. Zuby says he didn't stop any wars. Conflicts, maybe? I mean, I don't think he stopped even those, probably. Kimberly, I did that one already. Let's see here. Peyton Hall says inflation was the worst under Joe Biden, 10% inflation in 2022. Keep spreading propaganda, though. Peyton, you need to ask a question or I'm going to boot you. Because what you're doing right now is cherry picking facts to spread your narrative. Do you want to engage with me, Peyton Hall? Answer yes or no, because otherwise I'm going to boot you. I don't want you on here just saying lies, you know? You answered my question by saying you don't like facts. Congratulations, you're out of here. Okay, Ethan says opinions on APAC. I don't care for APAC. The same way I don't care for any lobbying organization that tries to get right-wing politicians elected. Alrighty, let's see here. GXG says, is there a realistic ceiling for our debts? Yes. At a certain point, our debt will become so great that it will start having disastrous effects on American citizens and our government and our standing on the world stage and the bond market and all sorts of knock-on effects like that. But we don't need to hit that. We can stop it from happening, basically. Nick says, hello, sorry we have not chatted in a while. What are you talking about? You've been asking questions all day, Nick. Are you okay? Are you a bot? Are you real? Mia says, how did Clinton balance the budget? So, I don't know enough about this to opine on it. I believe it is a combination of two things. It's a combination of Clinton got really lucky with the tech boom that happened during his administration. So an argument could be made that whoever was in charge of the government would have been credited with having a budget surplus for the first time in years. But I believe that there was some adjustments that were made to the economy by Clinton that also assisted in that process. So, taxes going up on the wealthiest people and corporations, not by as much as Reagan cut them, but more than had been previously there. Again, I'm kind of like half remembering stuff, so take this all with a grain of salt, I would say. Let's see here. Nick says that Nick was not me. Whoever that was possibly a bot. Well, now you're both sus as hell. So I don't know what to make of this. Shork says, is it realistic for any future administration to bring the debt down? Yes, 100%. Tax the rich. That's all you got to do. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Okay, GXG says, name Donald J. Trump's best and worst cabinet nominations. I mean, you're asking me to pick best and worst pieces of shit. It's like they're all pretty terrible. I mean, Marco Rubio being a moderate, and then as soon as he becomes Secretary of State, becoming a full fucking MAGA psychopath, I think is probably like up there. Tom Homan is a fucking psychopath. Pete Hegseth is a fucking psychopath. Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, like they're all terrible. Pam Bondi, like, yeah. I mean, I might put Stephen Miller at the very top because he's apparently like our shadow president and also our shadow attorney general right now. So yeah, I'm pretty upset about all of it. Let's see here. Okay, JP says Clinton's bio said he came in with a plan and had to drop it all to negotiate debt rates, which were often 20%. Oh, interesting. Yeah, I don't know enough about it to opine on it. Ficasicka says Governor Hochul says no on Mondani's free bus plan. Why don't they sort this out before fooling the public? I don't think it's fair to say that they quote unquote fooled the public. There are different jurisdictions between the mayor and the governor's office. And so maybe there are things that he was asking the governor's office to assist with that maybe she's not going to assist with. And maybe there are other ways that Mamdani is going to try to affect that on the city level. But I don't think it's fair to say that that they fooled the public. Let's see here. Pocho says, why are they terrible? Can you explain a little? Oh, 100% Pocho. So basically, everybody that I named in that list of pieces of shit in Donald Trump's administration are bad for a bunch of different reasons. Number one, a lack of experience. Number two, a lack of credibility. Number three, their fealty is towards Donald Trump and not America. That's probably the biggest one. Where Pete Hegseth, as the Secretary of Defense, is tasked with protecting America from enemies, foreign and domestic, but instead he is acting like his mandate is just to protect Donald Trump and do whatever Donald Trump says. Kash Patel is in charge of the FBI. They are supposed to be going after criminals and protecting American citizens from crimes and people that would do crimes. And instead, what they are doing is investigating Trump's enemies and dropping cases against Trump's friends. Just a little taste there for you. Alrighty. Eustace Flack says, do you think it's a good idea to have government mandated unions? for every sector. Oh, that's an interesting idea, Eustace. I don't know. It feels a little sticky to me. It feels a little bit like there are potentially negative knock-on effects that you would need to somehow inoculate against, where anything that is a government program has the potential to be weaponized by a fascist administration like what Trump is currently doing. And so, I'd be really curious to see what the specifics of that policy proposal is. Maybe a smarter person than I can explain it to me. But yeah, I think it's a cool idea. I really do think it's a cool idea. Pocho says, "What about Marco Rubio?" So Marco Rubio is, he started out in 2016 as an anti-Trump Republican, and he has always been very like not full MAGA during the first term or during the Biden administration. He seemed reasonable for a Republican. Then he became Secretary of State and he's fucking full MAGA now. He's supporting everything that Trump is doing, regardless of how stupid it is. And he's got like 4 other jobs right now because people keep on leaving Trump's administration or getting fired, and then he just gives Marco Rubio that job. So the question then is, who really is the Secretary of State? And the answer is it's some fucking real estate dude from Florida that's really good friends with Trump, who's been flying all over the world, having negotiations with world leaders, even though he wasn't confirmed or anything like that. Steve Litkin or Lotnick or something like that. Lutnick, I forget what his name is. Yeah, dude, zero experience whatsoever acting as our shadow Secretary of State right now. It's fucking psychotic, man. Lindsay Reed says, "I'm sad that the Democrats caved. Why?" So, Lindsay, this is obviously a big question that everybody has been asking about. And so, if you want to know why the Democrats decided to fund the government, it is complicated, and I gotta say, I take issue. I love you, Lindsay. I know you're a regular. I take issue with anybody who describes it as the Democrats caved. I know that everybody's saying that, and so this isn't coming from you, I'm sure, but it's neither that the Democratic Party caved or that they handled this perfectly. It is obviously a lot more complicated and nuanced than either of those polls. So as best as we can tell from reporting, Chuck Schumer has been getting pressured by moderates and centrists within the Senate to end the shutdown even before it started. And so an argument could be made that it was a Herculean effort on his part that he was able to keep it together for as long as he did. And where the shutdown was being successful in kind of pointing everybody in America towards what the Republican Party is and what they've been doing, it has also been an opportunity for Republicans to make Americans suffer more and then use that suffering to put pressure on the Democratic Party to try to end the shutdown. So because Democrats care about federal employees getting fired and people starving because they can't get SNAP benefits, or people freezing to death because they're not getting government assistance for their heating bills, and because air traffic controllers are resigning en masse and the ones that are staying are overworked and underpaid, and that's really what you want, is like a stressed out, sleep deprived air traffic controller, right? Who is working overtime. Yeah, a lot of these Democrats were getting a lot of desperate phone calls from the constituents saying the suffering is too much and the Republican Party is not budging. So yeah, I don't think that it was the move, but I also am not somebody who is suffering from the government shutdown, so I don't even know if it is kosher for me to be a strong advocate for the shutdown continuing. It is a very privileged position to be able to sit here and say that other Americans suffering from the shutdown is worth it. So yeah, Boogie Oogie Woogie says Schumer sold his soul. I don't think he did. I just think that he's not meeting the moment, And so while I completely agree that we need a new Senate leader for the Democrats, while I completely agree that every one of the Democrats that voted yes on this should be primaried, including Chuck Schumer, even though he voted no. People are treating this like it is way simpler and way more and way easier than it actually is. Right. Fikasika says Dems caved because the stock market was crashing and both parties have their interests in the stock market. I don't buy that at all, Fikasika. I don't buy that for a second. Boogie Woogie Woogie says, I was suffering and it's pathetic that they caved. All right, Boogie Woogie Woogie. First of all, you are a stranger on the internet, so I don't know if you're telling the truth. Maybe you weren't struggling. If you were struggling and you still think that the shutdown should have continued, I would just say, bravo. Like I am happy that there were people who were putting their money where their mouth is. If again, that is what you're saying. But calling them pathetic, saying that they caved is ignoring a lot of complexity on this issue. Shork says, is it possible that the Schumer shutdown deal won't happen or is it guaranteed? It's not guaranteed, but it is basically a done deal, I would say. All the people that would have stood up against it, we've already passed that hurdle, so it is basically just green lights from here on. Banda Boss, good to see you again. And no, I am not on here late. You are on here late. Oreo20 says, could it be possible to require a president to take a test like CEOs are required to take? Absolutely, but you would need to vote for politicians who are going to do that, and the Republican Party is not going to do that. D. Gregory says, could it just be a gimp to get the House of Representatives back in action? Oh, that's interesting, D. Gregory. Yeah, I actually hadn't thought about that. I would love for that to be the case. I think we're giving the Democratic Party a little too much credit if they're saying we're setting up a shutdown fight in January. We have got all these protections for SNAP benefits and federal workers for that shutdown fight, and we will manage to sit our last Arizona, House member. If that is what happened here, then that's pretty good. But I don't think you can argue with how much of a messaging disaster the way that they handled the end of the shutdown was. So yeah, I would love to give Democrats that kind of credit. Maybe it went into the calculus. I don't know. I haven't seen any reporting on that. Trina says, I think we are headed for another shutdown in January. Trina, I kind of hope that we are. Honestly, I kind of hope that we are. Shork says, what's the process to get Schumer out? So there's two ways. Obviously, he could lose his primary for Senate. He could lose his general election to a Republican. Obviously, we don't want that to happen. But if he loses his primary, then fucking God bless, go enjoy retirement, Chuck Schumer. If we want him to not be minority leader of the Senate right now, the way that you do that is you would need to call like a special conference of the Senate Democrats. And you only need, I think, around 10, somewhere between like 11 and 9 senators in the Democrats coalition to call for this special meeting. So they would go to Schumer and they say, we need to have a special meeting. And the only thing that those 10 people need to say is, what will the special meeting be about? And they will say, it's about you. And then the meeting will be called. And then you would need more than half of the Democrats to vote for a different person to be the minority leader. And all of that stuff is very possible, I would say. This is where, if you live in a blue state and you love your senator, this is where you fucking get on the phone and you go, hey, fucking get Schumer out of there. I support you getting Schumer out of there. Vote for fucking somebody else, blah, blah, blah. Alrighty. John Abbott says, as far as I'm concerned, every Senate Dem who doesn't demand Schumer step down from leadership is complicit in that vote. I completely understand that, John Abbott. I think you're being a little too harsh on them because this is somebody that they have worked with for potentially a really long time. I'm sure there's some feelings there. So maybe they're not going to call for him to step down publicly because they don't want to embarrass him or something. But I agree with you. Like, if you're asking me like who my favorite Senate Democrats are, it's all the ones that are calling for him to step down right now. Ready. Let's see here. Eustace says, what are your thoughts on Graham Plattner? If you don't want to comment on him, I understand. Oh, that's fine. So Graham Plattner has done things that are offensive to, women, Black people, and Jewish people. And as a Jewish person, that's really kind of the only issue that I really feel like I have the credibility to discuss. And where his tattoo is concerned, I fully buy his argument for why he got it, why he never got rid of it, etc. He was a drunk Marine hanging out with his buddies, suffering from PTSD. You do stupid shit when you're in that situation and you're young. I can 100% imagine him not knowing that it was a Schnazi or Schnazi associated tattoo when he got it. Potentially, he learned about it at some point and was like, "Oh, it's ironic that I'm keeping it because I would rather not spend the money to get it removed." And everybody knows I'm not a Schnazi, so it's just an embarrassing look. Look how embarrassed I am by this stupid fucking tattoo that I got when I was overseas. And now that he's running for senator, he got it covered up and he acknowledges what it means, and he's a different person than he is now. If you are a black person or a woman who does not accept his explanation or apologies for his Reddit posts, then I can't argue that that is unacceptable. You're the one who gets to decide whether or not that's an acceptable excuse. But again, if we're not voters in Maine, it really doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter what you or I think. You know what I mean? All right, Trina says I was disappointed in the 8 Senate Democrats, but opening the government before the TN special election in December is smart. Yeah, Trina, I would say I completely agree with that. And again, it's this weird line to draw between I don't think that what they did was the right move, but I also don't think it is fair to describe this as like snatching defeat from the jaws of victory or giving up a 20 run lead or shit like that. It's much more complicated than that. And so, in that complication, Trina, is that those 8 Senate Democrats might not even be the people who wanted to end the shutdown. They might have just been the sacrificial lambs because they're not up for reelection for a really long time. So, they are the safest. They are the ones who are America is most likely going to, if not completely forget that this entire fucking thing happened in 6 years. Robert says, excuse, nice choice of words. I don't know what you're referring to. HC says, I have a few questions. All right, put them in the chat. Alrighty. Shork says, do we at least get to see a vote for a release of the island files now? Potentially, once we get our Arizona rep in there, so long as the discharge petition gets filed and voted on, then yeah, 100% that should happen before the Tennessee special election in December. HC says, why did the Democrats cave when they just went 18 for 18? So I don't think that they did cave, HC. Caving, again, there's this narrative from a bunch of Monday morning quarterbacks that the Democrats were fucking killing it, and this was just them blowing a 20-point lead. I think it's a much more complicated than that. So according to reporting, there were a lot of Democrats in the Senate who were not on board with this shutdown from day one. And so the fact that Schumer was able to hold this coalition together until now is pretty impressive. But if we don't want to give him credit, don't give him credit. I don't like Chuck Schumer, so I don't need to give him any more credit than he deserves. What they did get in the negotiation was that the spending bill only goes until the end of the year. So we're set up for another spending fight in January, potentially another government shutdown. And they funded SNAP benefits in 2027, and they made it so that the president cannot fire federal employees during government shutdowns. So they are setting themselves up for a better position for a shutdown in January. So why shut down why end the shutdown now instead of letting it continue a little bit more? Because the holidays are coming up, and the Republican Party has made it clear that they do not give a shit about forcing the American people to suffer more as leverage against the Democratic Party. So Republicans did not care about Trump firing federal workers or SNAP recipients starving to death or people freezing because they couldn't get government heating assistance or anybody who was inconvenienced by a flight cancellation or delay or anybody that was worried about all these air traffic controllers who are sleep deprived and overstressed. They don't give a shit about all of that. But the Democrats did. And the Republican Party knows that the Democrats care about those people. And so at some point, they were going to want to end the shutdown to alleviate those people's suffering. How they did it, when they did it, I think all of that could be potentially have been done better than what we currently saw. But yeah, I don't think that it was them blowing a 20-point lead. I also don't think it's them playing three-dimensional chess. I think it is, as with almost everything in politics, it's something in the middle. It's something in between. And thank you, everybody who helped me achieve my gift goal. I really appreciate that. So thank you very much, Miss Weaver Bay and Triska and Voodoo. I really appreciate all of you guys helping support the live stream here today. So yeah, we're gonna be wrapping up soon because we're at about an hour right now. So get your final questions in. Um, let's see here. My regular streaming schedule is Monday through Friday, starting around 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. My schedule is regularly updated on my personal website and on my Twitch calendar and on my TikTok live events calendar. So if you're ever wondering when I'm going to be streaming, it will be there. David Douglas says, sorry, I missed your reactions to the Dems selling out. David Douglas, again, I don't think it's fair to describe it as Democrats selling out. If you missed my whole log ass explanation, I will happily go through it again, but that is an unfair characterization, I would say. Chris says, can you convince me that another shutdown in January would be good? I'm a scientist working in, I'm assuming that your biology or biographical research, whatever. So yeah, reasons why another shutdown in January would be good. Number one, um, we would be closer to the midterms, and so the pain and suffering that Republicans would be causing Americans during a second shutdown would be remembered even better. We would be past the holidays, meaning that the ways in which the Republican Party could make Americans suffer would not be as harsh as ways they could make them suffer right now because the holidays are coming up. So they would have less leverage for reopening the governments under. They would have less leverage over the Democrats to reopen the government. As part of this shutdown deal, they made it so that SNAP is fully funded, and they made it so that the president can't fire federal employees during a government shutdown. All of those take away power from the Republicans that they would use to pressure Democrats to reopen the government. Additionally, the Arizona House rep will get sat now that the government is back open, which will be good for releasing the fellow with the island and the plane files. So yeah, there are a lot of ways that this could be spinned as, three-dimensional chess. I don't think that that's a fair description, the same way I don't think it's fair to say that they sold out or caved or blew a 21 read. Alrighty. David Douglas says Dems keep making deals with scorpions and wondering why the people get stung. Again, David Douglas, I think that is inaccurate. Robert De La Rosa says, but that's when Republicans will silently push something brutal through while we're distracted. I don't think I don't buy that, Roberts. When do you think that would happen? What do you think that they would push through that they couldn't push through otherwise? It seems a little lacking in specifics. David. Chris says NOAA funding and furlough impacted a lot of collaborators and sharing of my academic research. So Chris, what did you think about it? As somebody who was directly affected by the shutdown, what did you think about it? Did you want it to continue longer? Would you rather them stop and then start again in January? Do you think it was a mistake from day one? BB Fan says, what are your thoughts on groups like Indivisible? I am for them. I love Indivisible. I love Run for Something. I love Vote Save America. Groups that are doing the work of trying to fix things. We should all be supporting them either through volunteer hours or donating to their budgets. Roswell says, if I run for Congress, how much money can I get from AIPAC? Oh, excuse me. I am unfamiliar with the very specific campaign finance laws around lobbying organizations. So there will probably be super PAC contributions that you could get out of them, but then there also could be like direct contributions to your campaign as well. And that's for any lobbying organization. So again, this hyper focus on AIPAC is a little sus, in my opinion. Short says Republicans added a provision to this deal to allow them to sue the Department of Justice for January 6th subpoenas. That's interesting, Shork. I have not heard that. I'm going to look into that a little bit. Shooting from the hip off the dome, that kind of feels a little bit like you know, like there's no case against James Comey. There's no case against the subpoenas that the DOJ, uh, you know, did for January 6th. So if they're allowing the DOJ to sue, uh, if they're allowing them to sue the Department of Justice for the January 6th subpoenas, my guess is that it won't go anywhere, and that's the reason why they allowed that to be in there. John Abbott says thoughts on Trump's 50-year mortgages suggestion. It is the same fucking playbook. We are going to give you pennies as we are extracting even more resources from you. Oh, you can't afford a house? All right. Well, what if you had to pay more for it, but you just paid a little bit less every month instead of what you would have to pay in a 30-year mortgage? It's so fucking stupid. All these fucking band-aids that they are putting over our cost of living crisis to make it seem like it isn't the billionaire class fucking us all over. It isn't the billionaire class trying to fucking starve us all to death. You know, it's so fucking stupid. David Douglas says AIPAC is always exempt from the rules. They aren't classified as a foreign lobbyist organization. So they're not classified as a foreign lobbyist organization, David, because number one, they are funded with American billionaire dollars, so they're not getting any money from Israel. And number two, they use a loophole saying that they are not lobbying for Israel, but they are lobbying for the relationship between America and Israel. Now, do I think that those are like okay loopholes that they're exploiting? No, but it is not that AIPAC has like secret control over the government so they get special lobbying privileges. Every lobbying organization is toxic the same way that AIPAC is. Paolo says, do you, kid, even know what politology is? I'm sure it's the study of politics. Chris says, shutdowns like this are disastrous for research. They stop progress in unfixable ways. So is that the person who was telling me about their funding stuff? So that's the first comment of yours that I've seen, Chris, since I asked you about it originally. So can I assume that what your take is that you don't think the government should have been shut down, even a little bit, even from the first day? Let me know if that is accurate. Because what you're saying is true, Chris. I just want to know how you feel as somebody who was directly affected by that. Chris says, I think the GOP are willing to hold American people hostage and the Dems are not. That is accurate. Again, but where's the rubber meet the road here, Chris? Like, what do you feel? Do you think they should have done this? Do you disagree with any way how the Democratic Party played this? Like, let me know how you feel as a person who was affected by it. Okay. Eustace Flack says, why does Trump seem unimpeachable this term? Eustace, because Republicans control Congress. If Democrats controlled Congress, Trump would have been impeached like 10 times already based on the shit that he's done. Jamie says, can the e-files be tampered with before they release them? So I am similarly worried about that, Jamie, because the people that are in charge of the FBI are Trump loyalists who will do whatever the fuck Trump tells them to do. But I did see some reporting recently that said that there are copies of these files in different agencies. So potentially they are protected if they are existing in, the House Oversight Committee or Judiciary Committee or whatever, wherever else they are. It is likely that any attempt to doctor them would be ineffective. But that's shooting from the hip there. Alrighty. Scrolling down to the bottom of the TikTok comments, Eustace says, still, it's kind of crazy just because Republicans control Congress. There's no other course of action. I completely agree with that, Eustace Flax. And here's the thing is like, we need to take this into account when we vote for our politicians. Like, it doesn't matter if the president is in your party. You should impeach them if they do impeachable things. And the Republican Party has proven time and time again that they are willing to put party over country. That they are willing to do what Donald Trump wants or what's good for them and their billionaire buddies over their oath to the Constitution. So we need to do the work of unelecting every Republican, if only for fucking that. There's a billion reasons, but that is a very big and good one. Chris says, I was open-minded about whether or not it was a mistake. Having trouble fitting responses to the small numbers of characters. Completely, I am, what do you call it? I am sympathetic to that, Chris. I don't have a settled opinion. I think it is worth fighting for, but not at this high of a cost. I was open-minded about whether or not it was a mistake. Okay, yeah, so it's complicated. I love that. I love that you were honest about that, Chris. Where everybody in the comments right now, all the fucking talking heads are saying that it would have been so easy to just keep this shutdown going. It's yeah, it's infuriating for me as somebody who I've been on this fucking tip for a long time. The way that Democrats get dragged through the mud for the very difficult job that they are trying to do. And then as soon as this fucking happened, I was like, I know exactly what's gonna fucking happen. I know and then it fucking happened. Chris says it's not worth starving people. Yeah, I completely agree, Chris. So yeah, it's complicated. And anybody who's trying to make it seem like this is anything else is full of shit, in my opinion. Mike Green says, I think the Democrats did the right thing. Tell me how it would benefit through the holidays. I think the argument for going through the holidays would be to end the shutdown in early December, because let Republican voters feel the crisis of a government shutdown during Thanksgiving. Let Republican voters feel the crisis of cost of living and furloughs and missed paychecks when they're trying to buy a turkey and feed their family. That's the argument for that. And, as a very privileged person who isn't hurt by the shutdown, that's kind of where I landed on how long we should let this shutdown go for. But I am not a Democratic senator getting desperate calls from a constituent saying, you're killing me. And that's a little hyperbolic. I don't know if those calls happen, but I think it's likely that calls like that happened. Ready. Let's see here. The kid doesn't tell us if he knows what politology is. Congratulations, Paolo. You are out of here. Ian Niles says you'll never see politicians struggling. I mean, that's a little hyperbolic, Ian. I think plenty of politicians struggle plenty of times. Carmine says it's a reminder that as a party that is trying to move forward, we have to move forward together. Completely agree with that, Carmine, 100%. Lawrence O'Donnell did a great explanation last night on the Democrats' vote. Oh, interesting. I'll definitely check that out. I wonder if it's the same things that I've been fucking saying. John Abbott says, in addition to the files having been handled by multiple agencies, I've also heard that the security has been irresponsibly lacking. So releasing altered versions would not be a lie they could keep up. Oh, interesting. Yeah, potentially the leaks will help us out there as well. Let's see here. Ian Niles says, like who? Oh, I don't know. Maybe Joe Biden, whose son joined the military and then fucking died in action, right? Isn't that a fucking thing that happened? Or died of cancer or something? Fucking, I don't know. Yeah, but politicians suffer, my guy. They, just like everybody else, they suffer. Kimlo says, why didn't Johnson swear in the rep from Arizona? What was he waiting for? The leader's possible passing. Many people are arguing, Kimlo, and I tend to agree with them, that he was not sitting her because he wanted to avoid a discharge petition on releasing the files of the guy that had that island and the plane that everybody's fucking flipping out about. Potentially also as leverage to end the government shutdown, Kimlo. So that is very likely what is going on. Is the Republican Party was trying to protect a bunch of child predators by not sitting that one representative from Arizona. All right, everybody, let's start wrapping things up. If there are any questions that I was not able to get to on this live stream, or anything that comes up when I'm not live streaming, then please reach out to me. I love getting correspondence from y'all. I want to be able to answer your questions even when I'm not streaming. This project of mine of trying to replace every Republican in government with a Democrat, and then replacing every Democrat we don't like with a better Democrat, it does not stop when I am not live streaming. And so if I can be a resource for you being a part of that fight, whether it is in giving you information, or pointing you towards great volunteer opportunities or places to donate your money or your time, I want to be that resource for you. So use me and abuse me. Use me until I am all used up. JP creepily reaching out. That's very funny. The Discord is one of the best ways to get in touch, because in addition to being a place with other like-minded people and a way to get in touch with me, There's also recommendations there for books and podcasts and great organizations for you to do the work. Shout out to my patrons, Robert, Shannon, Carmine, and Patrick. I very much appreciate your support. If you would like to also support the show financially, you can, but you don't have to. I know we're all struggling through cost of living crisis. I have a Patreon that you can join for as little as $1 a month. I have a store that you can buy things from. The links to both of those things are on my bio. And also, you can send gifts on TikTok and Twitch and YouTube. You can become super fans and subscribers. If you're an Amazon Prime person, you can give me a sub on Twitch, and it doesn't cost you anything, but it does give me like $2 for everybody that does that. Let's see here, and yeah, just like my heartfelt plea for you all to do the work, because it is only us doing the work that's going to get us through this. There's nobody's coming to save us. We need to do the work, otherwise we are fucked. Sweet Rob says, why do the Supreme Court continue allowing ICE to harm people? Because the Supreme Court is in the pocket of the Republican Party, and the Republican Party likes what ICE is doing. Amy says, tell us your plan. My plan for what? Jamie says, Dems shut down to save healthcare. Republicans shut down to save PDF files. That is 100% accurate. All right, everybody, I'm going to get out of here. Thank you again for all your questions and your comments and your gifts and your likes and subscribes. Be good to each other. Be good to yourselves. Self-care is part of the work. And I will see you guys tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye. Goodbye, 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 goodbye. Goodbye.